Hi everyone, welcome back to Mad About Cards and Crafts. Today we're creating 2 cards. We'll be stamping on black cardstock. I'll be using some Distress Oxides and featuring the new Salvaged Patina ink, which was recently released from Tim Holtz. I'm using some watercolor paper. This is Aqua Cold Pressed Black from Stonehenge. I have 2 pieces cut down, not to any particular size. 2 red rubber stamps from Simon Says Stamps. They're 6x6 stamps, Kaleidoscope and circle doodles, as well as the Distress Oxides that you see on the screen. I've removed my foam pad from my Misty and I've added one of the panels to the Misty. I did add some tape runner to the back of it to hold it in place. This is the trick to stamping on black cardstock and being able to see the ink colors, and that is white pigment ink. I am using the Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment ink, and you can see that I'm trying to get a really good coverage. So I want to make sure that the coverage is solid. I'm going to stamp it a few times and get that nice solid feel from this stamp. The ink pad, I think, is just starting to get a little bit more dry. I've had this for, oh my goodness, probably about 5 years, so I probably need to get a re-inker. Make sure when you are doing this technique that you clean very well between each of the colors. You don't want to contaminate any of your ink pads. This has a red rubber stamp, has some nice deep etching in it, so you want to make sure that you get in between all those little nooks and crannies. As you can see, I did lay down the Salvaged Patina and I spritzed it with water. I am going to pick up some of that white pigment ink, which is why I wanted to make sure that I had a really good coverage, because each time that I'm closing this door, and especially because I am using water, I am going to pick up some of the ink that was laid down previously. I added some wilted violet. I'm cleaning again in between, and now I'm coming in with the Kitsch Flamingo. So the 3 colors that I'm using on this panel are Kitsch Flamingo, Salvaged Patina, and then the wilted violet. I love this color combination. It gives me a very nice vibrant coverage. I thought that because I did stamp the Salvaged Patina first, that I lost some of that ink when I was picking it up with the stamp, so I added a little bit more, and watch this pop right here. I'm going to come in with that wilted violet and bada bing, bada bong. There we go. Look at how beautiful this card panel is. On to card panel number 2. I'm going to stamp this several times using that Unicorn White pigment ink. This is the Circle Doodles, also from Simon Says Stamp. You can see that my panel is a little bit narrower. As I said, these were just scrap pieces that I had. I knew I was going to create a mini slimline and an A2 size card, so as long as it was bigger than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, I was going to be good. I'm adding a little bit more Salvaged Patina as well as some mowed lawn to this panel. And then I'm going to clean off in between, and look at how pretty that mowed lawn looks with the Salvaged Patina. I'm going to add in some worn lipstick, and we're going to get a little bit more pink in this. And there we go. There's a nice look at that. I'm going to layer up the colors a little bit more, and then that's going to be panel number 2. So as I said, I am creating a mini slimline. The mini slimline is going to be 3 1/2 by 6. That will be the final card dimensions, and an A2 card, which is going to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. After you're finished doing your ink layering, you want to make sure that you dry this off. As I said, I used Distress Oxide and the Hero Arts pigment ink, which means that that ink takes a long time to dry. I also added that water to the panels, so that water needs to dry as well, and the best way is to either set this aside for about an hour or to dry it with your heat tool. I prefer to use the craft tool from Tim Holtz because the heat setting is more even, and so I dry my panel with that. I am using that Salvaged Patina and laying down some color onto this Nina 80-pound cardstock, and I'm going to do the same thing with this Kitsch Flamingo. I'm going to use these pieces to cut out accents for my cards. So For the Kitsch Flamingo, I'm going to blend that on, and then I'll bring in the Wilted Violet. I do add some other elements. Off camera, I am going to, that Salvaged Patina, I'm going to end up embossing that using the lumber embossing folder from Tim Holtz. So there is going to be texture on that piece of cardstock that you'll see in a little bit. And I also brought in and stamped a butterfly from Simon Says Stamp Beautiful Butterflies. I stamped one of the larger butterflies in the Salvaged Patina. I then used my embossing glaze over that and embossed it, and then I used the Kitsch Flamingo to color out the butterfly. I did fussy cut the butterfly, and then you'll see when I bring it in how I use it on my card. I had some scrap black cardstock. I cut out the word hello, which comes from the Hello You stamp set and die set from Simon Says Stamp as well. I cut it out 3 times, and I did glue 2 of the layers together, and then this is going to be my top layer. So I'm doing the same thing. I laid down that unicorn white, and I did it a couple times to make sure I got a really nice solid image, and then I brought in the Wilted Violet and I stamped atop of that. Here I'm just gluing that last layer, so this is going to be 3 layers high, and you can see that beautiful piece that I blended with the Salvaged Patina is now embossed with that lumber embossing folder, so I have a little bit more texture at the top. I took some of the scraps that came from some of those pieces that I ink blended, and I'm using those as accent pieces. This is a Lawn Fawn stitched rectangle die, and I used that to cut out my panel. I have to tell you, because I did lay the pink and the purple pieces over top, it did take a couple times for me and a shim to get over that because it just didn't want to cut through those layers. So you could cut them separately and then add them to your panel with the stitching, but I had already glued those down. Here I have the Wilted Violet and a piece of Nina 80-pound cardstock, and I'm adding that so that I get the same color. I have a nice color match. This is, again, a card base, a black card base. It's top folding, and my panel is cut about 1/8 of an inch smaller than my card base, so I'm going to get a very tiny black border, so that will bring in that black that I used on the Stonehenge paper, and then I'm going to glue this panel to the front of that, so I have 1/4 inch of the Wilted Violet all the way around. So I glued the lumber piece to the back of the Doodle piece. I added the 2 strips, and now I'm adding the butterfly, which I had heat embossed off screen. Here's where I make a little bit of a boo-boo. I'm going to use my gel pen to add the antennas back to my butterfly because I wasn't about to fussy cut those out, and I'm going to smear it right there. I touched it with my finger. I should have known better. I'm going to have an ugly smudge there, but it's okay. What I end up doing off camera is I take my Spellbinder tool in one and I just scrape off that gel pen. It scrapes off really nicely. So I end up doing that. I'm going to put my hello down, and then I'm going to bring in some white Nuvo drops, and I'm going to add the little circles to the top of the antenna. That'll add a little bit of dimension, not to mention that it will cover up the ugly smear that I created when my hand touched it. So that's card number 1. Card number 2, I have some mini slimline dies. I used the largest one and the smallest one. I didn't like how much border there was between the largest and the middle-sized one, so I'm going to bring in some layers here. As you can see, I'm adding that Salvaged Patina. That is the larger of the slimline dies, and then I'm going to add a 1/8 of an inch smaller piece of black cardstock, and then 1/8 of an inch smaller than that of the white cardstock, and I'm going to layer all those pieces together. That is the crochet that I told you that I was going to cut out that piece that I ink blended earlier. And then these dies are from Tim Holtz Funky Florals 2. I just cut them out of white. I layered the flower. There's like 3 different pieces that you could either use separately, but I chose to lay them on top of each other to give that a little bit of dimension and interest since I was keeping it white. I'm going to tuck them in right behind that crocheted lace. And then I have a sentiment that I die cut using one of my sentiment dies. I just wanted the stitching along the top so that I had a little more interest on that. And then I used my guillotine trimmer to cut it down to the right size. I'm going to place that with some art glitter glue right there on top next to my florals. And then we're going to add the layers. For the final layer, I will bring in my X-Fasten foam tape to give this panel a little bit of dimension, and we'll place it on, as I said, a 3.5 by 6 inch side folding mini slimline card, and that is my second card for the day. I hope you try this technique. I think it's really beautiful, especially with the Distress Oxides. If you've been on the fence about the Salvaged Patina, let me tell you, when you look at the final photos, you'll see just how beautiful and vibrant the color is. It is not peacock feathers. It is a far cry from peacock feathers. And it is also not tumbled glass. It's a beautiful color on its own. I think that you would absolutely love it. Let me know in the description box below what you think of this new color. I want to thank you so much for watching. I am going to show you a final view of the cards, and then I will also show you, leave you with a couple of videos if you're interested in seeing more. Thank you so much for watching again. Until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.